Did raise their hand. Mr. Braun, we start with you. What specifically would you do to lower property taxes, and how would you replace funding for schools and local police and fire service?
So that's kind of a no-brainer. I visit all 92 counties every year, and starting at least a couple years ago, people were complaining about it. And of course, it started when we were hit with record inflation. And we had a system in place that could have worked until that came along. The circuit breakers that were put in place by the Daniels administration just weren't doing the job. So I was the first to come out with a policy because you heard it all the time. And what I heard mostly is that those most vulnerable on property taxes going out of range, young couples, elderly, were having trouble paying their property taxes. So if we don't get them under control, reset them, which my plan does, back to where they were before they did go out of control, cap them in terms where your bill can't go up any more than 2% for young and elderly couples, 3% for everyone else, transparency, and have referenda that are done in a general election, not a slow election.
Okay, Mr. Braun, thank you very much. Ms. McCormick, 60 seconds to you. Same question.
Hello, Hoosiers. Yes, I know property taxes are a huge concern because I'm a fifth-generation farm family. I am a teacher. I am a businesswoman. I am also a Hoosier. I am a wife, and I am a military mom. And I certainly know that property taxes are weighing on everyone. I'm also a homeowner, and I was your last elected state superintendent of public instruction as a Republican. So I also know, too, the role that property taxes play. I am proud of our common sense property tax plan that we put out that really gave a savings to all Hoosiers. And we approached it in a way that would be bipartisan. So we took the best of the best bipartisan language that was already established by Republicans and Democrats in the General Assembly. And we use that language. We already have fiscal, so it's ready on day one to give relief to all Hoosiers, particularly our seniors and our veterans. And we plan to save $660 million in the process and save our local governments.
Ms. McCormick, thank you very much. Mr. Rainwater, same question to you, sir. 60 seconds.
So, Senator Braun, I apologize for having to correct you right away, but actually 4 years ago, while you were in Washington, D.C., being a U.S. Senator, and I debated Governor Holcomb, I promoted the idea that we should, first of all, cap property taxes at 1% of the purchase price of the property, and it should never go up because your property taxes should not go up. You should not be taxed on the unrealized gains in your property's value increasing. And then I also said that we should limit that to 7 years. And that was in 2020. So I actually came up with the plan first because I recognized many years ago as a Hoosier homeowner that property taxes were spiraling out of control.
Mr. Rainwater, thank you very much. Mr. Braun, 30 seconds on rebuttal. Would you like to comment?
In terms of a plan that has been fleshed out recently that actually had some real effort put into in terms of what would be reasonable and practical, also to where it was going to make sure local governments and school districts had enough to keep growing. It addressed the most critical issue, reset it before we got inflation from D.C. by the current administration. And when we did that, it's a plan that'll work into the future.
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, your hand is up. 30 seconds, rebuttal.
Fellow Hoosiers, I just want to make sure that you're aware that Mr. Braun has no idea how much effort I put into my plan or how much planning I've done or what I've considered as far as the things such as TIF districts and 10-year tax abatements that we currently give corporations in the state of Indiana when considering how we can fund local government. He has no idea.
Ms. McCormick, your rebuttal on cutting property taxes. Go ahead.
Sure. Our plan was so well received because it offered a relief to Hoosiers immediately, but also protected our local levels. We don't want to defund the police and our schools and our libraries and our parks and our fire. Senator Braun's plan came after that local level and farmers. And so he had to come back out with Plan 2.0. I'm not sure what plan we're on. It's kind of like commercials. We just keep redoing them. But, you know, our plan was well received. It is full of common sense, and we're ready to add that relief that Hoosiers so desperately need.
Candidates, thank you very much. We have a lot to get to tonight. We have to move on. Dakari.
Thanks, Phil. Let's turn now to immigration. Immigration and the southern U.S. border have been a hot button topic in both local and national political conversation. So our question to you is this: what should be the role of Indiana state government in addressing it? Ms. McCormick, we start with you. 60 seconds.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Illegal immigration is certainly a concern for the federal government. It needs to be solved at the federal level. And what we have seen is a lack of a willingness for decades to solve the problem. And unfortunately, we had a common sense, very bipartisan immigration border bill that was put up in D.C. and even the Border Patrol supported it, and Senator Braun voted against it. So those protections that would have helped Indiana, he voted against. In addition, we need to embrace legal immigration and making sure that we establish utilizing that in a strong economy. 6% of our population are here legally, and they play a huge piece of our tax issues. They are over $4 billion that they play into the taxes we receive and are a critical part of our economy.
Okay, Ms. McCormick, thank you. Mr. Rainwater, same question to you, 60 seconds.
Absolutely. So, first of all, as a libertarian, I believe that the role of the governor of the state of Indiana is to enforce the rule of law in the state of Indiana. We have state laws and state regulations, and we need to follow them. More importantly, at the federal level, we have a complete failure of our federal government. Both the Republicans and the Democrats have failed to enforce their constitutional mandate to manage immigration. And we need for both sides of the aisle, if you will, to do what's best for us everyday average Hoosiers and handle the immigration issue instead of making it a political football.
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, thank you. Mr. Braun, the question to you now.
So this one is very simple. Under the Trump administration, we had taken illegal immigration to record lows. As soon as the Biden-Harris administration got in there, it was open borders. And the consequences of that has been chaos, making every state a border state. Not to mention that in the process of it, 100,000 fatalities due to fentanyl, which the cartels bring across an open border. The national security issue of all the folks that are coming in under that policy that was working so well before is really a tragedy for this country. I won't go through the crimes that even come here to Indiana. We hear it all the time. And the presidential candidate, Harris, was the border czar. She's got to make that litigation of why the border was that porous and why we've got the consequences from it.
Okay, I see we have two hands up. Mr. Rainwater, we'll start with you. 30 seconds.
I hear Senator Braun say it's a simple solution, but my question is, if the man has been a U.S. Senator for the last 6 years, why hasn't he solved it then? Why is it that he thinks that he can do more as governor of the state of Indiana to solve the immigration problem when it is a federal constitutional issue than he can as a U.S. Senator?
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, thank you. Ms. McCormick, 30 seconds to you.
Again, it goes back to Senator Braun was in D.C. and Mr. Rainwater is correct that he had time to fix it. And when he was presented with a bipartisan bill that was put forth by some of the most Republican conservative congressional people, he voted no. And the perception in Indiana is he voted no for political reasons versus the safety of Hoosiers and the safety of Americans. The other piece of it in that bill had a huge piece for fentanyl detection, which we desperately need here in Indiana, and he voted no.
Mr. Braun, I see you have your hand up.
Very simple. I don't think any Hoosier would be for making it legal that you could have 5,000 illegal immigrants coming across the border daily. It was way, way lower than that, probably 10 to 20% of it when Trump had the border under control. The fact that it was opened and it was done under the same legislative platform that was in place with Trump, Biden-Harris responsible for it. That bill only had 3 Republican supporters because no one was for it for the reason I just said.
Okay, candidates, thank you. We have a lot to get to. Phil.
Kari, thank you very much. We turn now to abortion tonight. Indiana was the first state to pass a near total ban on abortions after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Do you believe Indiana should add additional restrictions on abortion, repeal the new law, or keep things as they are now? Mr. Rainwater, we start this question with you. 60 seconds, sir. Go ahead.
As a pro-life libertarian, I believe, first of all, that the governor's office needs to, once again, invoke the rule of law. It is the governor's job to execute the laws in the state of Indiana. The legislature is required to pass the laws, and then because we have a three-branch government, the judicial branch is to determine if the law is constitutional. If there are changes that need to be made to the current law, then the judicial branch needs to determine if there is a constitutional question. And the legislature, which each one of you as Hoosiers can reach out to your legislator and let them know what you think they need to do to make the law better, if in case you feel it needs to be. Thank you.
Mr. Rainwater, thank you very much. Mr. Braun, should Indiana change its abortion laws? 60 seconds, sir.
So when Roe versus Wade was overturned and brought back to the states, it's where it should have been in the first place. And our legislature took that issue up and got with their own constituents, the citizens of this state. And it's a pro-life state. They crafted a bill that's got reasonable exceptions that mustered not only the legislative process, but even the courts. So when it was put together, it was vetted with the people of our state. And the people of our state are pro-life. So I think they did a good job. It was reasonable in the way it was constructed. And I think it's held up through the courts. And I think it reflects that idea that you're probably never going to get anything done at the national level. I couldn't imagine 60 senators agreeing on that issue. That is a false premise. If you say any side, Democrat or Republican, will do it nationally, thank goodness it came back to the states.
Mr. Braun, thank you very much. Ms. McCormick, 60 seconds to you. Should Indiana change its abortion laws?
Yeah, so obviously I'm the only female on the stage. I'm the only person who has been pregnant, who has given birth. I am a mom, and I'm a proud military mom. What I will say is I trust women. And I trust our healthcare providers. And this topic is so complex. And I think it's so interesting that men are the ones telling women what we can and cannot do with our bodies. And Senator Braun is saying, you know, bring it to the people and let us have our voice. Let's do it. Put it to a ballot initiative. Let's start it. Let's see what happens. Because across the nation, Americans have talked. Hoosiers don't have that option. So we rely on a governor who will fight for women in order to give us a voice. 60% of Hoosiers believe in allowing women to make the decisions about their health care. It is that simple. My opponent's ticket has said no exemptions for rape, no exemptions for incest. Senator Braun said he thinks we got it right. We need to go back to the standards of Roe and trust our women. And Hoosiers, I have your back on this.
Mr. Braun, she brought up your name. I'll go to you in a second. But first, Mr. Rainwater, I saw your hand was up. 30 seconds on rebuttal.
Fellow Hoosiers, I just want to point out two things. First of all, I know many Hoosiers, lifelong Hoosiers, who are pro-choice. So, and I've never read anywhere in our state constitution where it declares that Indiana is a pro-life state. I don't know where Senator Braun gets that from. But I also know many women in the state of Indiana, lifelong Hoosiers, who are pro-life. So when Dr. McCormick makes it sound like all men are evil and that only women should speak on this issue, I do trust women as well. And there are many women who tell me that they're pro-life and that they agree.
Unfortunately, Mr. Rainwater, your time is up there, 30 seconds. Ms. McCormick, I will let you respond, but Mr. Braun, go ahead and give your rebuttal, 30 seconds.
Well, I think I made it clear. We took it to our state legislature, took it up. They vetted it carefully. And in terms of whether we're a pro-life state or not, those issues you're going to have to get from listening to your constituents. And I think if the legislators had put it through, they did that. It was held up in the courts, and it reflects the majority of Hoosiers in this state.
Ms. McCormick, 30 seconds on rebuttal.
Yeah, at no time have I ever said that all men are evil. I've got a wonderful son, and I'm sure he's watching. I hope he is, and he's got some studying to do. I also have an amazing husband, an amazing dad, an amazing brother, and lots of nephews and a lot of friends. I never said that. I would never make that accusation, ever. But what I will say is I trust women. And when I trust women, if that equates to the people on the stage that I said that men are horrible people, that should tell you something.
Candidates, thank you very much. Dakari.
We'll turn now to education and specifically school vouchers. Indiana has increased income eligibility, now more than $220,000 for a family of four. State numbers also show that last year, 45% of vouchers went to families making more than $100,000, and that the state paid more than $439 million in voucher payments, money pulled away from the state's public schools. So our question is this: do you believe the voucher system is helping or hurting the education of Indiana's children? Mr. Braun, we start with you.
So to me, that's clear. We are a state that has been on the leading edge of choice and competition, and also to where we're putting the parent as the main stakeholder in his or her kid's education. That's the way it should be. When you have a one size fits all, it's called a monopoly. I happen to come from a great public school district. My wife and I went there, our kids went there, and our grandkids are going there. Not all places have that same advantage. So if you're not for choice, competition, vouchers to make it doable, it's not a zero-sum game. We have enabled public school systems every year to have more resources, money following the kid, not the building. That was smart when that was done years ago. So all in all, choice, competition, parents in the driver's seat.
Okay, Mr. Braun, thank you for that response there. Ms. McCormick, same question to you.
Yeah, we have a lot of people in Indiana who profess to be education experts, and it's unfortunate because I believe in fiscal responsibility. And I believe if we're going to have a program that puts $1.6 billion into private education, we should be looking at the results, and the results aren't good. It also, make no mistake, this is not about parents choosing. This is about a school choosing. The admission policies need to be looked at. If I show up with a child and the school does not like the academic performance or the color of their skin or how they identify LGBTQ or their religious belief, they do not have to take them. Our state constitution is clear. It says to fund common schools, which are determined to be public schools. Public dollars need to go to public schools. That whole program needs to be reviewed. Also, it has not I've not lost sight of, it defines $220,000 for a family of four as a threshold of eligibility. And how many families in Indiana can say that they make over $220,000 for a family of four? It is certainly not serving Hoosiers.
Okay. Ms. McCormick, thank you. Mr. Rainwater, 60 seconds to you. Are school vouchers helping or hurting education?
Well, I believe thoroughly in universal school choice because I've been a parent in Indiana long enough to know that our public school system is failing. When our statewide standardized testing comes back and tells us that only 63% of the children that take the test are successfully doing well enough in math and English. When I went to school in Indiana, 63% was a failing grade. And we are spending almost 60% of our state budget on education. And yes, the state constitution says that the state will fund common schools. It does not say that the state cannot fund other schools. Every Hoosier is paying taxes in the state of Indiana, and every Hoosier should get the benefit of that money. There is no such thing as public money. It's your money. They took it from you.
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, thank you. Ms. McCormick, I saw your hand up first. I'll call on you 30 seconds.
Yeah, I just want to address the piece of performance. So Indiana schools have been under different standards in which we are responsible to teach kids as a moving target. We keep changing those standards because we've had 20 years of one party rule. And it doesn't make a whole lot of common sense when we keep changing those standards before we know how we're performing. We also keep changing the test. And every time we do that, you're talking $40 million. So it's a waste of money. It's highly inefficient, and we really don't have good trend data to even decide what is and what is not working.
Thank you. Mr. Braun, we'll go to you next. 30 seconds.
I want to give a real world example of why we got to have choice and options. Small county next to where I live, Pike County, many years ago had mismanagement within the school district. The solution, 3 grade schools in a large county geographically. The one with the best performance was shut down to save money. Had it not been for the availability of a charter school, you would have had to bus those kids 20 to 30 minutes additionally. They are thriving now because they had the option and the parents went for it.
Mr. Braun, thank you. Mr. Rainwater, we'll go to you. 30 seconds.
I just want to point out that Dr. McCormick makes the point that the test has changed. As a matter of fact, when she was state superintendent of public instruction as a Republican from 2016 to 2020, if I remember correctly, not only did the test change a couple of times during her tenure, but she had to say, hey, the test results aren't what we expected, aren't what we want, so we're not going to use them for a couple of years here.
All right.
And that was a waste of millions
your time is
of
expired.
taxpayer
Thank you.
dollars.
All right. I see we have other hands up, but we do have a lot to get to tonight.
No,
Phil.
I got to address this. As state superintendent, I don't set policy. I implement. I wasn't the one responsible to change the state law to make us keep changing standards and keep changing assessment. That's not fair and it's not accurate. That's on the 20 years of Republicans leading our state.
Okay. Mr. Braun, 15 seconds to you.
So again, if you were in charge there for 4 years and results never got any better, I think you got to be held accountable when that's the one thing you did in state government. You can try to litigate it on why things weren't working. All I say is that has got to be.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Mr. Rainwater, 15 seconds to you. 15, we're going to ask you 15 seconds if you would like to rebut anything either of the candidates said.
No, I think we've said enough.
Okay, thank you. We do have a lot to get to tonight. Phil.
Certainly do. We do have a lot to get to tonight. Candidates, sit tight. You're watching this All Indiana Politics special from Wish TV. Stick with us. We will be right back after the break.
Wish TV's Indiana Governor Debate is brought to you in part by Indianapolis Urban League and African American Coalition of Indiana.
debate. We want to get right back to our questions now, starting with marijuana policy. Dakari.
Phil, thank you. I want you to take a look at the map behind me. We've highlighted the state of Indiana. Here you can see that plainly in red. That is a state where many of us know, all of us know, of course, that marijuana usage is illegal. We're broadening it out to the entire nation. Other states in red, you can see also that is where marijuana use is legal. What I want you to focus on next are the blue states. That is where marijuana use is legal for medical purposes only. Next, the green states. That is where marijuana use is fully legal. But especially focus here, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois. It's the states around Indiana where marijuana use is fully legal. So our questions to the candidates tonight is this: do you support legalizing marijuana use in Indiana, either medical or recreational or both? Ms. McCormick.
Yes, so 80% of the Hoosiers, I hear you, and we released our common sense cannabis plan where we made it clear that we would start out with medical use, have a commission, get the medical use, get a well-regulated industry so we are not sloppy with it. We can learn from other states who have implemented what they did well, what they did not do well, making sure that law enforcement is at the table for those conversations. So it is a very inclusive conversation to hear their concerns. There are a lot of opportunities with this from the medical piece, because I've talked to a lot of Hoosiers that are wanting that option for the medical treatment in which they deserve and which they want. The other piece of that is then moving right into adult use. It is a conservative estimate, $177 million that we're leaving on the table when we are an island, as you saw on the map, with everyone around us who is legalizing. Everyone in Indiana is already using. So not everyone, but a lot of people in Indiana are using. So we also need to be cognizant of its hundreds, if not thousands of jobs that are on the line.
Okay. Ms. McCormick, thank you. Mr. Rainwater, we turn to you for the same question.
So, fellow Hoosiers, first of all, we have well-regulated tobacco, alcohol, and prescription pharmaceuticals here in the state of Indiana already. We don't need to expand government. We don't need a new commission. We don't need new regulations. We can make cannabis in all forms, medicinal and recreational, legal right now. There's been plenty of study done. As we pointed out, states around us have already done that work, and we have been talking about this for a long time. If legislators are not prepared, that is their fault, and we should probably replace them. We should make this legal now, and as governor, I would make sure that all nonviolent criminal cannabis-related offenses are expunged. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, thank you. Mr. Braun, same question to you. Where do you stand on legalizing marijuana?
Well, there's no doubt about it. Look at the map. It's cascading across the country. And at some point, when you're surrounded by 4 states, 3 of whom have actually probably one, I think Ohio is in the process of legalizing recreational, you're going to have to address it seriously. I've huddled up with law enforcement, been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, been endorsed by the State Trooper Alliance, and many sheriffs. I'm going to listen to them carefully, because whatever we do, they're going to be the ones that are going to have to enforce it or put up with the issues around it if you don't get it correct. So I think the time is ripe that we look at it seriously. Medical marijuana has got a lot of attributes to it. I think that's going to happen. That'd be something I'll seriously consider. Again, I'll listen to law enforcement. When it comes to recreational, that's going to cascade across the country as well. I'll think about that. Medical marijuana, I think we're probably ready for it.
Mr. Braun, thank you. Ms. McCormick, I see your hand is up. Same question to you.
Yeah, Mr. Rainwater mentioned the commission, and the commission is incredibly important to get that well-regulated industry right. We still don't have that established for hemp-related products. So we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and this is rolled out in a way that it can be successful. That's why we would take those steps in order to make that necessary push into adult use after medical. The other piece, too, I just have to say it's so interesting to hear Republicans say that they would listen to law enforcement on this, because we certainly didn't do that on permitless carry.
Okay. Ms. McCormick, thank you. Candidates, thank you for your answers.
In your platforms, you each talk about either reducing or restructuring state government. That would imply eliminating or downsizing some agencies. So what specific agency or service would you look to eliminate first and why? Mr. Rainwater, it's your turn to answer first. 60 seconds to you, sir.
Well, the first thing I think we need to do is not as much look at eliminating or reducing agencies as identifying money that is actually flying out the back door. You may be aware that it was recently reported that there was $724 million in Medicaid overpayments made that was discovered in 2017 and then basically swept under the rug because they didn't want to go and try to collect that money from the healthcare companies and the insurance companies that had been overpaid. We need to look at our state government, all 50-some agencies, and we need to identify where we are managing contracts badly, where overpayments exist, where the money is going out the back door, so that we can then determine what we need to do from there.
Rainwater, thank you very much. Mr. Braun, same question. How would you reduce the size of government? 60 seconds.
For the last 5.5 years, I've been hearing about that as I visit all 92 counties each year. And of all those agencies that Mr. Rainwater referred to, a lot of them have not had the thorough management and have not been gone through in terms of, do we need every employee there? Are we spending the money correctly? It's a $22 billion a year annual budget. Imagine if you could get 5% savings. That is a lot. And that's the way you could pay for a lot of other things you may want to do or reduce taxes in general. I'm guessing there's not an agency there that doesn't have room to be run more efficiently. And for me, I did that for 37 years in a small business, scaling it into a regional and then a national company. That will be easy to do. We'll find those things to reduce costs and actually make them run more efficiently.
Okay, Mr. Braun, thank you very much. Ms. McCormick, 60 seconds. How would you reduce the size of government?
When I went into the Department of Education, which was one of the larger agencies, we are over half of the state budget as K-12. We went in that transition, and our team did a lot of interviewing and reviewing to see what programs were working and what programs were not, where we were lean and where we were heavy as far as staffing, and we made the appropriate adjustments. I would do that with every single agency. It's about efficiency, it's about effectiveness, but it's also about interagency connectivity. And right now, when you have 20 years of one-party rule, there is no crazy enough to think about, but I lived it. There is very little interagency collaboration to get things done. So common sense would tell you, which is why we need to bring that balance back to the State House, that needs to happen across the agencies. It's super interesting that Mr. Braun keeps bringing up his business as an example of how he successfully did it when he had problems with overtime wages that everybody knew about in Jasper, Indiana. But for me, it's about efficiency and effectiveness and making sure that we are being due diligent with taxpayer dollars. Mr.
McCormick, thank you very much. Mr. Braun, your name was brought up. I'll get to you, but Mr. Rainwater, would you like to go? It's your turn. Would you like to?
No.
Okay, Mr. Braun, then go ahead. 30 seconds, sir.
So I think this is a place where you've got to look at the experience that you bring to this office. And if you've done that as a career, you've done it on the biggest stage out there where you've been constantly calling the federal government out to get its act in order. And that is a problem with both parties out there. But here, this is something that's practical. If you've had a record of growing a business, keeping costs under control, it should even be easier in government.
Okay. Mr. Braun, thank you. Ms. McCormick, 30 more seconds.
Yeah, I'm the only candidate here that has been in charge of a state agency. So that experience will serve me well when I am reviewing and making those decisions about state agencies. We've got a lot of great people in the state of Indiana that work in those state agencies, and they have great ideas. Why would we not listen to them and say, bring some practical solutions to the table and let's get some savings for Hoosiers?
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, now you do want to rebut, so go ahead, 30 seconds. Sir.
Absolutely. So one thing I do want to point out, in my 25 years as a software engineer, I did spend 6 years with 2 different companies working as a contractor for the state of Indiana, working on software for FSSA, doing software quality assurance for several agencies. And I saw firsthand the bad management the issues that are going on and what needs to be fixed. And unfortunately, someone may have years of experience, but when they've never actually fixed anything, that concerns me.
Mr. Rainwater, thank you very much. We have to move on. Thank you. Kari.
Let's go ahead and talk about jobs tonight. A key discussion point over the past few years has been preparing Indiana's workforce of the future. I want to ask you specifically about the state's minority communities. What will you do to get young men and women of color prepared for high-wage jobs in the state? Mr. Braun, that question to you.
So I think that's going to be applicable across the board. Helping those that have had the most struggle with it, to me, is something you simply have to put the priority on it. But until you get our system that's looking at what the high demand, high wage jobs are, and then give that to parents and make sure for the 150,000 jobs that we have out there that need a better high school training, that you don't stigmatize that and that you balance it out. Think about that. If you'd get those filled, that would be $3 to $4 billion into your economy. You wouldn't be misguiding kids into a bad career that doesn't have a job that you can get in Indiana. So for any segment of our economy, you got to have parents with the proper information, kids guided appropriately into degrees or trades where you can get a job in Indiana, or either they get exported out of state to find one or back in the basement.
Okay, Mr. Braun, thank you. Ms. McCormick, same question to you.
This is where we have to be really smart and use common sense. So our common sense economic development plan touches on this. We've got to be business friendly, but also take care of Hoosiers. And when you're looking at our most at risk areas and communities and where many of our minority families live, we've got to make sure that we are targeting our resources, not just in the job space, but looking at it in a bigger picture. Let's talk about affordable housing. Let's talk about healthcare access. Let's talk about quality education and quality health care. Let's talk about universal pre-K. Our workforce, regardless of who that is, we must have an educated and healthy workforce. We must have stable families and stable housing so that it betters everyone in the workforce. But we have to target those resources into areas most at need. And I give credit where credit's due. IEDC did a good job on regional grants, but there can be even further bulleting and focusing down even more minute into getting where those services need to go.
Ms. McCormick, thank you. Mr. Rainwater, the same question to you. What will you do to get young men and women of color prepared for high-wage jobs in the state?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize the fact that our state and local governments have abandoned many of the areas, whether they be urban or rural, that need the kind of help that we're talking about. If you take tax increment financing districts, for example, they were developed and designed specifically to help areas within the state that were economically disadvantaged. What it has turned into is a free-for-all opportunity to use tax increment financing to gentrify entire municipalities and actually keep minorities in a disadvantaged state. We need to turn that around, and that would be step one.
Okay, Mr. Rainwater, thank you. Each of you, your candidates, thank you for your responses.
All right, sit tight. We have a lot more to get to tonight. You're watching this All Indiana Politics special from Wish TV. We'll take a quick break and be right back.
Wish TV
Politics special, our Indiana governor's debate. We are now in our final minutes, so let's get right back to our questions. Phil.
Yes, Dakari, thank you very much. I want to ask about affordable housing. A new report out this week from the IU Public Policy Institute says Indiana is second worst in the Midwest for affordable rental housing. The city of Carmel has announced it will pursue a new plan to build more affordable single-family homes. As governor, what would you do about affordable housing in the state of Indiana? Ms. McCormick, we start with you this time, 60 seconds.
This is really a huge issue that I hear across the state, not just in big cities, but also in rural areas. I live in Henry County, and we certainly have an affordable housing issue there as well. And I know many communities are working on that. So I commend our local level leaders for doing so and the partners they have with several organizations. But defining what's affordable is also interesting. I've asked some that are working on that, what is the new housing? What is it, what is that price range for that? And many are over $250,000. And I'm not sure that's where we need to get for affordable housing. But also, too, our common sense property tax plan was one piece of this to try to keep renters renting where they are and being able to afford it, and also keep homeowners in their homes. And that takes property tax relief. And that's exactly what our property tax relief plan did. It's going to benefit everyone, homeowners and also renters, particularly veterans and seniors, also fair lending practices, and making sure that we're bringing partners to the table to have really great solutions.
Ms. McCormick, thank you very much. Mr. Rainwater, same question. What would you do about affordable housing in our state?
First of all, I think that it makes a lot of sense to say that property taxes are contributing to the lack of affordable housing, especially for renters, because we know that landlords, when their property taxes increase, they pass that on to the renters. The problem is that we're not going to solve the property tax issue by giving tax credits and deductions on your income taxes, or limiting the increase after we roll back the property taxes to a previous level. What we've got to do is redo the state constitution, make sure that it's 1% of the purchase price of your property. It never goes up, and that it ends at some point so that you, whether you're a homeowner or a landlord, knows that there is an end date to when you owe property taxes so that you can own your property. And when that happens, renters will benefit from it.
Mr. Rainwater, thank you very much. Mr. Braun, 60 seconds on this one.
Well, I think that's the one thing that we all three agree on. And I think we held our hand up early. Property taxes have gotten out of line. Remember, mine is the plan that caps it at 3% to where it cannot go up more than that on your bill each year. That's the only one that keeps it to where it cannot be where they're asking you to pay more than the growth of our own economy and your ability to do it. The other issue that's made it more complicated is the inflation that we've inherited from a current administration that has made everything more expensive. I want to cite this one example of an individual I've gotten to know that is put not on multifamily, single family as well, has got the same issue. He has been entrepreneurial. He found the key to actually building an affordable 3-bedroom home on a slab to where you can afford it. You got to get local jurisdictions helping on stubbing in the utilities. To me, I'll try to be entrepreneurial before we try to do anything more through government.
Mr. Braun, thank you very much. We do have time for rebuttal. Ms. McCormick, go ahead, 30 seconds.
Part of the issue with this, too, is wages. We are 47th in the nation with annual wage growth, and that is a direct reflection of 20 years of one-party rule who don't want to police themselves and who do not want to help Hoosiers. So we've got to get those wages up. The other thing, too, is these gentlemen have property tax plans that would decimate our local governments, and our local governments have said that. Our chambers have said that, and our farmers and our Farm Bureau have said that. And so it's a matter of putting plans out that will, yes, add relief to Hoosiers, but also take care of our local levels. We cannot defund the police and our schools and our parks and our libraries. It just can't happen.
McCormick, thank you. 30 seconds to you, Mr. Rainwater. Go ahead, sir.
Two things I want to point out, fellow Hoosiers. First of all, Mr. Braun says that his plan is the only one that would limit the amount that your taxes, property taxes, go up. He's correct, because mine would make sure that your property taxes never go up. Not 2%, not 3%, not at all. The other thing that I want to point out is this. Your property taxes are your money, and local government and state government are addicted to spending your money. Of course,
Rainwater,
they don't
thank you very
want
much.
you
30
to get
seconds
it
is
back.
up. Mr. Braun, 30 seconds to you on rebuttal, sir.
So again, the plan that I've got is comprehensive, and it will make sure that homeowners, again, elderly, young, and a couple other categories, get reset to where they were before it all got out of hand. And then it puts a platform in place that's practical. Local governments and school districts are the lifeblood of government in this state. It's where it should be most active. But on the other hand, they got to live within the means of the taxpayer to be able to afford it.
Mr. Braun, thank you very much.
All right, it is now time for closing statements in our Indiana governor's debate.
Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds for a closing statement. The order was decided by a blind draw last week. We begin our closing statements with Mr. Braun. 90 seconds, sir.
So it's been an honor to serve Hoosiers in the U.S. Senate. Did that to where you've got a record to where you've been one of the most effective senators in the U.S. Senate as a freshman Senate office in areas like education, healthcare, agriculture. Imagine what you can do when you can come back and set the agenda and get along with a legislature that is a supermajority. That means you should get some stuff done. But the idea that you can get things done if you're not generally lined up with them is probably not going to work. I intend to come back, look at every agency, like I said before, be entrepreneurial in terms of doing the things that we need to do to take Indiana to that new horizon, make it a peer state of other entrepreneurial conservative states. I've recently rolled out detailed plans on education, healthcare, agriculture, inflation in the economy, public safety, and quality of life, including rural broadband, many other categories. Look at it, Mike Braun for Indiana.com. If you want someone that's got a proven track record, build a little business into a regional company and a national one, 3 of your 4 kids running it, that's the American dream. That's what I intend to bring to Hoosiers.
Okay, Mr. Braun, thank you very much. Our second closing statement goes to Ms. McCormick. 90 seconds.
Thank you, Wish. Thank you, Phil and Dakari and team. I so appreciate it. Thank you to Mr. Rainwater and Senator Braun for being on the stage as well. Thank you to you, Hoosiers, for taking your time to be informed. Your charge is now go inform others. If you are looking for change, I am ready to bring it. I'm Jennifer McCormick, and I will be your next governor. I am a 5th-generation farm family. I am a teacher. I am a businesswoman. I was your last elected state superintendent of public instruction as a Republican. I am a wife, and I am a proud mom. I also am a Hoosier, and I know we need a governor we can trust and someone who we can like and someone who's going to bring common sense and balance to that state house. We are done with one-party rule. We also need someone who will fight for our freedoms, reproductive freedoms, making sure we have academic freedoms. We deserve that. Everyone that I talk to is ready for that change because we know we deserve a better government than what we have now. I have common sense plans out on education, on utilities, on the economy, on cannabis, on ethics. Go to the website, McCormickforGov.com. Look at those. But I will tell you, this is a choice. Do we want extremism? Do we want fear and chaos? Do we want someone who has a ticket that talks about book banning and white Christianism and Jezebel spirits and, and saying that Fisher's community is grooming kids? Is that what we want? No. We want optimism and opportunity. We want change. And I promise you, I will represent you well at home and on the national level.
Ms. McCormick,
thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Our final closing statement is Mr. Rainwater. Go ahead, sir. 90 seconds.
First of all, thank you to everyone for being here this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to debate. I believe it's important. I appreciate each of you watching this evening. I'm just an everyday average Hoosier. I did not serve in the Indiana General Assembly or the U.S. Senate. I have not been the superintendent of public instruction. I'm just a hardworking Hoosier who is sick and tired of watching the federal government, the state government and local governments run by Republicans and Democrats take more and more of my money and your money, and it goes out the window or out the back door, and there's no accountability and there's no change. And it doesn't matter who gets into office, there's no disruption of the status quo. Folks, I'm a libertarian. I am not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I don't have anybody pulling my strings or giving me large campaign donations in order to make sure that I do things their way. There is no Hope Inc. or Make It Red behind me. So I'm asking for your vote, because I'll go in and I'll disrupt the system, and we'll get an Indiana that makes everybody.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you for joining us for this All Indiana Politics special.
And we want to thank our affiliates from around the state as well who joined us. You can find video of the full debate tonight on wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your night.